Okay, I want to start with something of a provocation.
Oh, I like it. Go on.
What if I told you that the most spiritual person in the room isn't the one in the corner looking all gaunt and detached?
Hmm.
What if it's the person laughing at the dinner table, wearing a really nice suit, and, just thoroughly enjoying their meal?
I'd say you're trying to sell me something. That sounds very convenient for people who like nice suits.
It does, doesn't it? It feels like a loophole. But today, we are going to explore a figure who just completely upends that stereotype of what a saint looks like.
Right, the cave, the rags, the total withdrawal from society.
Exactly. But we're looking at Imam Abul Hasan al-Shadhili.
A giant of the 13th century. And yeah, he's the man who basically argued you don't have to leave the world to find God. In fact, he kind of argued that leaving the world might be the wrong move entirely.
So this is our deep dive into what's known as the Shadhiliyya Order, which I was surprised to learn is one of the biggest Sufi paths in the world today. I mean, it stretches from North Africa all the way to Indonesia.
It's huge.
And the mission for us today is to really get our heads around this idea of sober spirituality.
Sober is the key word there. It's what distinguishes his path from, let's call it, intoxicated spirituality.
You mean like the trances and losing your senses?
Exactly, the kind where you abandon all your social responsibilities. Shadhili's way is all about keeping your feet planted on the ground while your heart is, in the heavens. It's the path of gratitude, or shukr.
So we've got the biographies, we have text on his methodology, his whole legacy. Let's start with the man himself. Because he didn't start out as this sober city dweller, did he? His origin story feels pretty traditional.
Oh, it does. Very traditional. He was born in 1196 in the Maghreb, so modern-day Morocco. He had the pedigree, too, a descendant of the Prophet Muhammad.
And like a lot of young men back then with that spiritual hunger, he went on a quest. He was looking for the pole of his time.
The pole. Right. We should probably define that.
Yeah, it sounds like a geography term, but it's really a spiritual rank.
It is. In Sufi cosmology, the pole, or Qutb, is, well, it's the axis around which the whole spiritual world revolves, the single highest-ranking saint alive in any given era.
So young Shadhili is wandering through North Africa, just desperate to find this master.
And this search takes him way up into the mountains of Morocco. You have to picture this. It's not a gentle hike.
No, this is rugged terrain. And he's climbing to find a hermit named Abd al-Salam ibn Mashish.
Exactly. And Ibn Mashish is the classic ascetic. I mean, he's living in a cave. He's totally withdrawn, deep, isolated worship, the whole 9 yards.
Shadhili finds him. He stays with him, learns the ropes. But this is where the plot twist happens. Because usually the master says, stay here, starve yourself, meditate until you levitate. But Ibn Mashish gives him completely different orders.
It's the pivotal moment of his entire life. Ibn Mashish tells him, basically, you're done here. Your work is not in solitude.
He tells him to leave.
He tells him, go to Tunisia, then go to Egypt. Go where the people are. He's explicitly telling him not to withdraw. Go become a public figure.
So he moves to Alexandria, Egypt. And we really have to feel the contrast here. He's going from the dead silence of a Moroccan mountain peak
to Alexandria. In the 13th century, I mean, it's a port city. It's loud. It smells of spices and commerce and unwashed bodies. It's a hub of everything.
The New York City of the Mediterranean.
Absolutely. And that move was strategic. By putting himself in the middle of all that chaos, Shadhili had to develop a way, a methodology that worked in the chaos.
If he'd stayed in the cave,
he'd just be another hermit. But in Alexandria, he had to figure out how to be with God while, arguing with a merchant or dealing with corrupt officials.
Which brings us to the most controversial part of his whole vibe.
Yeah.
The visual. When I read the sources, I honestly had to double-check this part.
The clothes.
The clothes. He didn't wear wool. He didn't wear rags.
No, he dressed impeccably.
The texts say fine white clothes. He rode good horses. He lived a dignified, almost affluent life. And this is where my skepticism kicks in.
Of course.
Because, honestly, if I see the spiritual guru today pulling up in a Bentley, my first thought is, scam. I assume they're loving the world, not God.
And that is a very healthy skepticism to have. But Shadhili was way ahead of you. He knew that's what people would think.
So how did he justify it?
He framed it as a theological stance. He called it the distinction between poverty of the pocketbook and poverty of the ego.
Unpack that for me.
Yep.
Because it still sounds a bit like Rolex for God.
Okay, think of it this way. In the traditional ascetic view, to show you rely on God, you throw away all your money, you beg, you show the world you have nothing.
Right.
Shadhili argued that this is actually a subtle form of complaining.
Complaining how?
Yes, he said that if a believer looks miserable and wretched and starving, they are walking around as bad advertising for God.
Oh, wow.
They are essentially broadcasting to the world, look at me, I serve the King of Kings, the most generous, the provider, and this is how he treats his servants.
Okay, that's a heavy reframing.
Yeah.
So looking wretched is actually an insult to the provider.
Precisely. He believed that showing the blessings of God, what the Quran calls tahaduth binima, is a form of gratitude. You dress with dignity to honor the one who clothed you. You eat well to honor the one who feeds you. You become a living testament to God's mercy.
But, and this is a huge but,
Yeah.
how do you stop that from just becoming straight up materialism? Oh, I bought this mansion to honor God's generosity.
That's the trap, and that's why the Shadhili path is, you could argue, much harder than the ascetic path.
Harder.
The ascetic path is physically hard, you're hungry, you're cold. The Shadhili path is psychologically brutal, you have to have the poverty of the ego. It means you can have $1 million in your hand, but if God took it away tomorrow, your heart wouldn't skip a single beat.
So you hold the world in your hand, not in your heart.
Exactly that. You have to realize that you are internally bankrupt. You are desperate for God's next breath, even if your bank account is full. It's an internal state of neediness masked by an external state of dignity.
I like that phrase. Internal bankruptcy, external dignity. Okay, so this leads us to his core methodology. The sources compare his path, this path of gratitude, to the more traditional path of struggle, or mujahada.
Yes, and this is one of my favorite comparisons in all of spirituality. The traditional path mujahada is about friction. It's about fighting the self.
So fasting, sleep deprivation, breaking the ego through hardship. It's boot camp.
It's boot camp. Tearing down the recruit to build the soldier. Think of it like rowing a boat upstream. You're using your own muscles. You're sweating. You're fighting the current to get to your destination. It works, but man, is it exhausting and slow.
And the Shadhili path.
Shadhili asks, why row when you have a sail? Path of gratitude is like hoisting a sail. You're catching the wind of God's mercy. You aren't relying on your own puny muscles. You're relying on this immense external force to propel you.
That's a great image. But what does hoisting the sail look like practically? Is it just saying, thanks a lot?
It's more than that. It's profound, deep recognition. There's a kind of spiritual math in the Shadhili text that is just mind-blowing.
Go on.
It says that a single moment of genuine gratitude for a blessing like you taste the strawberry and you truly feel the giver in that taste, that moment can elevate your soul faster than 1,000 nights of forced prayer without a present heart.
1,000 nights. That is a very bold claim.
It's about presence. When you're grinding through 1,000 units of prayer, but you're tired and grumpy, your focus is on your own effort. Look at me. Look how hard I'm working.
Right. It's about you.
But in that split second of real gratitude, your ego just vanishes.
Yeah.
And all you see is God's generosity. That connection is immediate. The rower is looking at his oars. The sailor is looking at the wind.
And the sailor gets there faster.
With a lot less fatigue.
And before everyone listening decides to, cancel their gym membership and just be grateful while watching Netflix, we have to talk about the guardrails.
Yes. Huge guardrails.
Because this sober spirituality came with a very, very strict warning label.
A massive warning label. Imam Shadhili was not a hippie. He was not saying anything goes. He was a strict adherent to the law. He famously insisted that no one can walk this path without ilm knowledge of the Sharia.
Why so rigid about that? If it's all about the heart, why do the rules matter so much?
Because without the rules, gratitude just becomes self-indulgence. It's an excuse for hedonism. You need the map to drive the car. He saw so many mystics getting high on spiritual experiences and then deciding they were above the law.
Like, oh, I'm so connected to God, I don't need to do the 5 daily prayers anymore.
He shut that down hard. He said the law is the foundation. You absolutely cannot bypass the basics to get to the advanced level.
Okay, so you have the structure of the law, and then within that, you have this engine of gratitude. Let's get practical. The sources break down his method into 5 internal disciplines.
The 5 pillars of the Shadhili mindset. Let's do it.
Pillar number 1, God consciousness or taqwa. But he specifies in private and public.
This is the integrity check. It's so easy to be spiritual when you're at a retreat or in a place of worship. But what about when you're on a Zoom call and you can mute your mic and roll your eyes at your colleague?
Or when you're filling out your taxes and nobody's watching.
Exactly. Shadhili demands that your internal state, your awareness of God, has to be consistent no matter who the audience is.
Which leads right into pillar 2. following the Sunnah, modeling your life on the Prophet Muhammad.
And this grounds the mystic. It keeps you humble. You aren't inventing some new, cool, bespoke lifestyle. You're following a proven template for behavior, how to eat, how to speak, how to treat your neighbors. It stops the ego from getting too creative.
Okay, pillar 3. This is the one that really stopped me in my tracks. Indifference to opinion.
Ah, yes, the ego killer.
The text says, not being swayed by praise or criticism. I mean, for a modern person, this feels almost impossible. We literally run on dopamine hits. We live for the like.
It is incredibly hard. We think we have thick skins for criticism. You know, haters gonna hate. But we have absolutely zero defense against praise. We just drink it up.
It validates us. It feels good.
And that's the problem. Shadhili taught that if you're elevated by praise, you will inevitably be crushed by criticism. You're just a slave to the audience.
You're a puppet.
True spiritual freedom, true soberness, is getting to a place where if someone calls you a saint or someone calls you a devil, your internal pulse does not change because you know who you are before God, and that's the only opinion that matters.
Wow. Imagine walking into your annual performance review with that mindset.
You did great. You failed. It's just information. It's not your value. That's the goal.
Pillar 4. Contentment or Rita.
This is about accepting the architecture of your life as it is. So, let's say you're stuck in traffic, you're going to be late. The normal reaction is anger, frustration.
Why is this happening to me?
Right. The Shadhili perspective is, God placed me in this traffic jam. There's a wisdom in it. Maybe it's to teach me patience. Maybe it's saving me from an accident up the road. It's a pivot from why me to what for me.
Deep trust. Okay, and finally, pillar 5. Turning to God in joy and sorrow.
So important. Most of us are foxhole believers. The plane hits turbulence, and suddenly we're very religious. Oh, God, please save the plane.
Right.
Shadhili says you have to turn to God with that same intensity when the plane lands smoothly, when you get the promotion, when the baby finally sleeps through the night. If you only call your friend when you need money, you aren't a very good friend.
Ouch. That is a good analogy.
It's about keeping the line of communication open when the weather is clear, not just in the storm.
I want to shift gears a little bit to his legacy. Because usually, in a deep dive like this, we're analyzing a whole stack of books written by the person. But Imam Shadhili never wrote a book.
Not a single one. He famously said, "My companions are my books."
He invested in people, not paper.
And it worked. His student, Ibn Ata'Allah al-Iskandari, eventually wrote down the teachings in the Hikam, the aphorisms, which is an absolute masterpiece of spiritual literature.
But there is one text, well, it's not a book, it's a prayer, that comes directly from him.
Yeah.
The Hizb al-Bahr, the Litany of the Sea. And the story behind it is just cinematic.
It really is. So picture this. He's on pilgrimage, crossing the Red Sea, and the wind just dies. Completely
Stranded.
utterly stranded in the middle of the water for days. The heat is unbearable. Tensions are rising on the ship. It's a genuine life or death situation.
And in that moment of just absolute helplessness,
He goes into a deep state of connection, and as the tradition goes, he receives this litany, this prayer in a vision. He recites it out loud, and they say as soon as he finished, the wind picked up, the sails filled, and they were on their way.
what's actually in the prayer, though? It's not just, please send some wind.
No, it's intense. I've read the translation. It's not passive at all. It uses very powerful, almost aggressive spiritual imagery. It asks God to bridle the sea for them, just as he bridled the wind for King Solomon.
Bridle the sea, that is such a power move.
It is, and it encapsulates his whole philosophy. You are in the boat, which is your heart. The sea is the world all around you, the chaos, the danger. You don't jump out of the boat. You don't pretend the sea isn't there. You ask the creator of the sea to tame it for you so you can sail through it safely to your destination.
And people still recite this today.
Millions.
Yeah.
Every single day. It's used for protection, for clarity, for removing obstacles. It's one of the most widely recited litanies in the Islamic world, easily.
So as we wrap this up, I want to bring it back to our listener. We're not 13th century mystics. We have 9-to-5s, we have mortgages, social media notifications. What's this? So what? What's the takeaway from the Shadhili path for us?
I think the so what is relief. It's the relief of knowing you don't have to choose between your life and your spirit.
You don't have to quit your job and move to a mountain to find God.
No. In fact, your job, your family, your commute, that is the path. The Shadhili message is that God is not found by escaping the world, but by seeing him in the world. It's about shifting your vision from seeing the things to seeing the giver of the things.
It really challenges that binary we all have in our heads.
Yeah.
I'll be spiritual on the weekend when I have time. Shadhili says, no, be spiritual in the Monday morning meeting.
Exactly. It turns the mundane into the sacred. If you eat that sandwich with gratitude, it becomes an act of worship. If you drive your car with a sense of humility and awareness, it becomes a sanctuary.
I want to leave everyone with one final thought today, and it goes back to that terrifying pillar of indifference to opinion. We live in a performance culture. We're constantly auditing our own lives to the eyes of others, our boss, our followers, our neighbors. So here's the question. If true freedom means being equally unmoved by praise and criticism, how much of your current daily life is just a performance for an audience of people? And what would your life actually look like tomorrow if you decided to perform for an audience of one?
That's the work of a lifetime right there.
Thanks for diving in with us. We'll see you next time.